Hey guys, welcome to the 6th episode of the Starfrost series. It's almost done. Today will be the last item to the set, which is the Scepter. We're getting closer to having at least half of my viewers subscribed. Let's keep going with that. Now to show you how I made it. So, I had made this spear in May last year for a cosplay I never ended up doing, and you know, it had just been sat around unfinished for over a year, so I decided to use it as a base for Starfrost. The first step to transforming the spear was to edit the shape. I made a template for a star that would attach to the bottom of the spear. I used this template to cut out 2 stars from cereal box cardboard, and then of course I cut them out. Then I scored the star on both sides so it would be easier to bend into shape. After the cardboard had been scored, I bended the star on the lines to give it that 3D star look. To stick them together, I cut out a smaller star to glue the 3D stars to. With hot glue, I stuck it all together and carved a small hole in one side of the star for the end of the spear to be glued to. This is the same way I did the star for the top of my parasol, but I used super glue instead of hot glue because I was gluing it to wood. I then of course glued it onto the staff. I made sure to glue it on really well because this is the bottom of the staff, and because it's a cosplay prop it will probably take a lot of damage. So I've got to make sure it's not just gonna snap in half. As you can see, I'm just stress testing it there. And I decided it needed more glue. Now with the bottom of the scepter pretty much done, it was time to create all the crystal shards for the top of the scepter. It took me quite a while, but in the end I did manage to make myself a template that worked and made a lot of them. After I made around 11 ice shards, I think it was, I started gluing them together. Once all the crystals were done, I started adding details to the scepter. I did take the spearhead off of the scepter, but I didn't film it. With this circle I'm cutting out, it's gonna look like a cone shape when I glue it on. I took another bit of card and cut a hole in the middle of it, and this was to glue on top of the cone. I glued it down and then I cut off all the excess cardboard. After that, I started to apply some of the ice crystals to create the snowflake shape that the staff has near the top of it. 4 of the 11 crystals ended up on this. There were 4 big gaps in between the crystals on the staff, so I decided to make some spikes to fill in those gaps. And that's the snowflake centerpiece done. I cut out more cardboard to add the details that were above the snowflake. Here I'm just bending the cardboard before I glued it down. I made another circle piece to add another cone onto the top. And just like the other one, I added some cardboard to the top of it and trimmed off any excess. After that, I added the remaining 5 crystals to this top bit here, just on top of the cone. I did decide to cut the middle of the staff down a bit because it was a bit too high, and the crystals that I just put on were meant to have the orb sitting directly on top of them, so I ended up cutting this bit off. I needed to make the swirly spike that's on top of the scepter now. I kinda just sketched it out on the cardboard. It was mostly just a guess for what would work. My cat decided to have a look at what was going on too, but since there wasn't any fabric on the floor, she decided it wasn't worth sitting on. I used a craft knife to cut the middle out. And then I started bending the cardboard so it would curl. If I know anything about cardboard props, it's that you need to make it as strong as you possibly can, or else you'll be using first aid supplies to keep your broken props held together. I've had this happen to me 3 times at 3 different conventions, which is why I know this. But anyway, I traced the shape onto a cereal box cardboard so I could sandwich the wire in between the 2 pieces. Now the footage you just saw was from last month, but of course I postponed this video so I could have a weekend off and also make a bit of Halloween content. The footage you are seeing now is from the past few days. Here I'm gluing newspaper to the staff to smooth it out a little bit. I then picked up on what I had started last month and cut the cereal box cardboard out. After that, I glued the wire down onto the cardboard and bent it into shape, and then glued the other bit of cardboard on top. I took my DIY bauble that I was going to use for the glowing orb and used it to help me know where to glue the swirly thing. Once it was dry, I cut out some cardboard to fill in some gaps that were between the crystals and the swirly thing. Then I used my glue gun to melt a hole in the bottom of one of the bauble pieces for my fairy lights to go through. I then took it outside and spray painted it. Whilst the scepter was drying outside, I put tape on the fairy lights. Using tape instead of painting them is a lot faster and more effective. I left the last 7 lights alone just because these were gonna go in the orb, and if they were covered in black tape then you'd see it. Now I ran out of white spray paint right after I had spray painted the inside of the orbs, so for the rest of the staff I had to paint it with just normal white acrylic paint. After that I painted all the crystals black. I also made 2 extra crystals that were gonna go on the top of the orb. After all the paint was dry, I started to put black glitter on all of the places that I had painted black. It was supposed to resemble ice, so yeah. And since this prop was going to light up, the glitter was going to show a lot more. I made sure to add glitter to the end of the staff as well as the 2 crystals I made. Now that the staff itself was complete, it was time to sort out how this thing was actually going to glow. So I took one of the orb pieces and I traced the shape of it out on a bit of clear plastic and cut that out. It's hard to see on camera, but what I did was I cut a rectangle out in the middle of this circle for the battery pack to slip into, and now I'm piercing 7 holes around it for the lights to go into. Of course, before I glued that bit in, I put the lights through the little hole. Then I put the 7 lights and the battery pack into place before I glued the plastic in around the sides. Of course, I did not glue the battery pack down. The reason why I'm doing it like this is so that if the batteries ran out, I'd be able to take the battery pack out enough for me to put new batteries in. And then glued the orb down. Glued the crystals to the top of the orb, and then wrapped the lights around the staff, and I glued the very bottom light on. And if you're wondering how I turn the light on, I just take the top of the orb off and pop it back on, which is a little difficult to do, but once you get it on, it does stay in place. And that's pretty much the scepter done. It is the same size as me, like the same height, you just can't really see it in the camera. I absolutely love how this turned out. I've not done a prop since like April or something, so it was really nice not doing something that involved the sewing machine. This is also one of my biggest props I've done. I hope you guys like it. I think it came out pretty accurate, considering, you know, physics and stuff. Before I get a ton of disappointed comments from people who don't read my community tab, the full set reveal will be its own video, so it's not in this video. I decided against it because it would just be very stressful and I would have rushed it anyway. So full set reveal will be next week as its own video, and you'll get to see me put on the makeup, put the set on. You'll get to see it in a lot more detail than you would have at the end of this video, which is why I've not included it here. What else? A Q&A. I was going to do a Starfrost Q&A. Why am I shaking? I'm not used to speaking directly to the camera, so I'm trying to think of what to say. Yeah, a Q&A, Starfrost Q&A. You can ask questions about my experience with the game version. So of course, I can't say actual facts about it because I did not make it, but you know, you can ask me, you know, questions that me as a player, with my experience with, like, getting it or something, I don't know. Just questions about that and questions I'd know the answer to. And then you can also ask questions about the one I made, so my recreation of the set. Please do not ask me how I made it. People ask me this on videos of me explaining how I made it, which just shows to me that they don't actually watch the video, they just skip to the last minute. Yeah, please do not ask how I made it. I have a whole playlist and like 6 videos showing you how I made the entire set. So yeah, don't ask how I made it. Ask me other questions about the set that aren't a video. You know, they've not been explained in a video yet. But yeah, that's all I've really had to say. So just ask your questions. down in the comment section, or I might do a community tab post or something. But yeah, no set reveal this video. It will be next week as its own detailed video. So yeah, bye. Maybe you could join my Roblox group. I'm very active on Twitter. You can see what kind of stuff I get up to behind the videos. I have 2 Instagram accounts, one is cosplay and one is art. I also have a TikTok where you can see my cosplays in action, but if you do not have TikTok, I upload my TikToks to the Instagram Reel feature.